Hey guys, it's Steve for CollectorMania here, continuing the 32 series. We are on to Mardu. This is my Queen Marchesa build. She is a powerhouse. I will get into that right up front. She is probably my favorite Mardu commander out of all of them. I will be honest. Like, I know a lot of people prefer Kalia and stuff like that, but this card is just, it can't be beat on the control side. This is a Mardu controlled deck. If you've been watching the series, we were just talking about Newmont and land destruction. We're kind of in that same vein here, but this is a little bit more unique and I guess just interesting. So I'm a little less shaded on this one. So anyway, Queen Marchesa. She is one colorless and then Mardu. She is a human assassin, legendary creature, of course. She has Death Touch and Haste, like super relevant abilities, really. When Queen Marchesa enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. Now that's the key phrase on this card. Monarchy is actually really, really good. It's an effect that, I don't know, is out of the realms of normal cards, and I'm really happy they decided to do it in Conspiracy because I don't think this could be in a standard set. It's just that good. The deck is built around keeping the Monarchy or preventing your opponents from, gaining the Monarchy. Well, I guess that's the same thing, but you know what I mean. So anyway, at the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent is the Monarch, put a 1/1 black assassin creature token with Death Touch and Haste on the battlefield. So that is kind of one of our first steps into keeping the Monarchy. So if one of your opponents gains it, you can swing at them with their token, and if they don't have a chump blocker, you can usually get the Monarchy back. It's got like a Pelleforty ability in the deck. It's not really Pelefort though. It has a few of that. It's also just got a lot of effects that say don't attack me or else you're going to pay. So yeah, we'll kind of get into that here. So anyway, Queen Marchesa. The first Planeswalker, well, the only Planeswalker I really wanted to feature because I think we've talked about Chandra and Sorin before. But anyway, Kaya, Ghost Assassin. This card is really, really good and I wish I had more copies of it. It blows me away every time I play it. It just does so much for 4 mana. Being able to flicker, I've flickered Marchesa a million times with this. Just being able to have it leave, play on my turn, and then come back at the beginning of my end step is super great. There are a lot of things that we'll get into as far as how the deck works that this also works with. Like, I've done Sun Titans, I've done Yahinis. Yeah, just really, really cool card. I recommend it. I'll go through it really quick just because I feel like it's important. So it's a 2 colorless, 1 white, 1 black. Planeswalker, of course. 0, exile Kaya, Ghost Assassin, or up to 1 target creature. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of your next upkeep. You lose 2 life. Oh, that's not that much to pay for an effect like that. So once again, that's the key effect here, bouncing your creature or her until your next turn. As a side note, that is the only way she gains or loses or counters. She has no plus ability, so you have to basically flicker her out to have her come back for 5 loyalty counters. So keep that in mind. Her -1 is each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So there's a little bit of like attrition based, like I'm going to deal all you damage and gain some life effect there. Her -2, each opponent discards a card and you draw a card. That to me is just incredible. It's almost like a miniature Nicol Bolas at this point, the new God Pharaoh one. Really effective, really cool. Love this Planeswalker. Try and find her while you can, because I know she is one of those cards that is more difficult to find, just because Conspiracy is kind of a supplementary set. Getting into the deck, we've got Ailey, Eternal Pilgrim here. She is a white and a black, Death Touch, sacrifice another creature, you gain life equal to the sacrifice creature's toughness. So a good way to kind of sustain yourself. And pay 3, a colorless, a white and a black, sacrifice another creature, exile target non-land permanent, activate this ability only if you control 10 life more than your starting life total. So really effective at getting rid of threats, especially if you can gain a little bit of life in the deck. And there are a few ways. It's not the main strategy, but there are a lot of big creatures in here that you can sacrifice and all of a sudden be there just to destroy threats that wouldn't normally be able to get rid of. Past that, we've got Athreos, really effective, really good at just keeping your opponent's life total down, that way that they have to continue to pay life each time one of your creatures dies. And usually the strategy here is you choose one of the opponents that has a lower life total and you stick with that opponent. That way you're making it a little bit more difficult for that person to make those decisions. Seems kind of cruel, seems kind of mean, but it's the most effective way to use the card. A new addition, Bontu the Glorified, just a really good sack outlet, also just a really good attacker, really. Having Menace Indestructible definitely works really well. It actually really works into the strategy of the deck, which is to get as many indestructible permanents and or creatures on the board, and then just obliterate. I know we talked about obliterate in the last deck again, but it's really, once again, one of the linchpin win conditions in this deck. Yahini, I know I've talked about this card before too, but he is key here as well. Being able to make him indestructible while you wrath the board and then just get him a million counters is ridiculously awesome. Him having haste is also super effective. Him being a free sack outlet is probably his most, I don't know, important factor in this entire deck. Because you can just do it at any time, make him indestructible, or just get rid of something. Like, there's a lot of it, once again, attrition effects like Dictate of Erebos in here, where you can just make your opponent sacrifice creatures. And if you're getting Marchesa tokens, you really don't care about those creatures. Brutal Horde Chief. This is the kind of a different version of Hellrider, I'd say. Really cool card. Whenever a creature you control attacks, defending player loses 1 life, so there's that kind of attrition cycle again. You gain 1 life. It also has pay 5, and creatures your opponents control blocks this. Creatures your opponents control block this turn if able, and you choose how those creatures block. So having a lot of death touch creatures, especially like Marchesa and stuff like that, you can really, do some favorable blocks, favorable attack phases, stuff like that. So Brutal Horde Chief, really cool card. Another key card for indestructible, like keeping it on the board, Falcon Wrath Aristocrat. This is another creature that gets bigger. If a human dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Falcon Wrath Aristocrat. Well, I guess you sacrifice it to her. So she's a free sack outlet. She's flying haste. She's a 4/1. Really cool card. Another control card, Olivia Voldaren. This is a really effective way to gain control of your opponent's stuff and then just keep it and sacrifice it at your leisure, essentially. Really fun card. You can build an entire commander strategy around this girl. So, really, really cool. Then we've got Ravos Soul Tender. A fun way to start getting stuff back from your graveyard, especially since we're going to be sacking so much stuff and just recurring things. So, a lot of people have tried to use this guy as one of their partner commanders. I think he's really good for that. I think he's better in the deck, honestly. His effect is good, but I haven't found a pairing that I like enough to really just keep him up there. So, anyway, there's that. And then we've got Urbrass the Hidden, a little bit more of that keeping your opponents down kind of thing. Gives all your creatures haste, basically makes all their creatures enter tapped. So, really effective way of keeping the Monarchy once again. Another indestructible creature, we've got Zurgo Helm Smasher. He's indestructible on your turn, so really cool. Especially works right into our strategy once again, just keeping our stuff indestructible. They've got Scourge of the Throne, working a little bit with that dethrone mechanic. This guy will definitely, give you those extra combat phases when you need him. I've used him many times to just close out the game. A lot of times once people see that you've got a second attack phase, they will scoop, especially since you can manipulate your life total a lot in this deck, so you can keep yourself off of the throne, essentially, which is kind of funny if you think about it, because you're off the throne, but you're the monarch, so it's kind of like, what's going on here? Anyway, that's just, I don't know, a funny thing I thought of. So 5/5 dragon, flyers are always good, so there's that. Plus the artwork is just awesome. It just looks ridiculous. I want that blown up on a playmat. And then we've got Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight. Once again, a really, really effective way to keep the Monarchy. You put this down, people really don't have that huge of a benefit for swinging at you, but they have a huge benefit for swinging at each other. So, really fun card. Really fun just to put out there all of a sudden, and everybody just be like, oh my gosh, what do we do now? Yeah, so Gisela. Going back to the strategy where you're going to, once again, destroy everybody's lands, everybody's permanents, and then just your stuff is left. Greater Gargadon is a really effective way to do that, because you essentially just suspend this guy. You have 10 turns to try and 10 turns to try and figure something out, unless you want to start sacrificing stuff. So usually my course of play with this is I've played this on turn 1 many times, just to suspend it and get it out there. People see it as a threat, but sometimes they forget about it, and then all of a sudden you do, once again, like your Obliterate or whatever you're using to wrath the board, and then you just sacrifice your permanents that you don't want to keep or that aren't going to be there anymore, and you just put this guy into play. You bring it down to 1 suspend counter, and then on your next upkeep it just comes into play. So really cool, 9/7, yeah. Really good at closing out the game. So on from that, we'll get into our artifacts here. We've got a Felbar Stone. an interesting little kind of budgety option here. It's probably not played as much as it should be. It's really fun to have it in this type of deck where you're playing like 3 colors, 4 colors, 5 colors, just because more or less likely one of your opponents is going to have the color that you need. So there's that, just a quick little tidbit. Then we've got another free sack outlet in Ashnod's Altar. This is probably one of the most effective ones they've ever printed. Just being able to sacrifice a creature, get 2 colorless mana. It'll pay for a lot of things that you just need to get out. It will once again work with the Dictate of Erebos to wrath everybody's board essentially. So really cool card. So on from artifacts, we've got, I featured only one of my enchantments. The other ones are pretty generic, like I think it's Godless Shrine and Phyrexian Arena, so card draw and a little bit more attrition stuff. But Dictate of Erebos, obviously this card is huge in the deck. I would run Grave Pact, but the 3 black kind of makes it a little hard to cast in this deck, being 3 color. So I kind of had to fudge around with that, and Dictate of Erebos works perfectly. It's got flash, it could come in and be a huge surprise, you know, your opponents they go to Wrath of God, or, you know, do something crazy like, I don't know, I'm trying to think, just spot removal or something like that. You just flash in the Dictate of Erebos, and then all of a sudden they're losing as many creatures as you are, and then it's not so favorable to them anymore. So there's that. So on from enchantments, we've got our instant speed spells. Boros Charm is key here, giving all your stuff indestructible. I know I keep saying indestructible, but it's really like the key theme of the deck is indestructible. So this card can also close out games, you know, as we talked about with the dragon that lets you take extra combat phases. You give that double strike, that's even better. So you know, there are a few other things that, you know, it can put on. So really cool card. Recommend it for pretty much any Mardu or Boros deck. And then we've got Wake the Dead. This is a kind of gotcha card. Your opponent goes to swing at you, and you have an empty board state, and then all of a sudden you cast this, and now you don't have an empty board state. So, and you're going to sacrifice those creatures at the end of the turn anyway, so you don't care what dies in combat. You're just blocking to save your life most of the time. But the way that I really like to use this is for like ETB effects, like Sun Titan. Because then all of a sudden you're casting a Sun Titan, keeping whatever you get with the Sun Titan, and you don't really care that the Sun Titan dies, because you've just gotten something for it. And you've survived, essentially, and that's what we're looking for. So Wake the Dead, recommend it. It's a really cool card. Then I wanted to feature this type of removal. There are a few different effects like this, but Anguished Unmaking is probably the most, I guess, the cheapest and probably most effective. Exile target non-land permanent, you lose 3 life. That is not a really big cost to pay for an effect like this. You can essentially get rid of whatever you want as long as it's not hexproof or shroud. So really effective. Hits that Avacyn, gets rid of it. Hits pretty much anything. So Anguished Unmaking. Then we've got a tricky card, in my opinion, that not a lot of people play just because it is a little bit more, I guess it's skill intensive, I will put it that way. Crackling Doom. I saw a lot of people play this to great effect in Standard. I never was playing against them, but I saw them play it, and it is really, really good. Like, it is kind of funny, the things that you can pull off with this. Especially if you kind of manipulate the board states once again. Like, if there's a way that you can kill, or even just have your Dictate out, and then just sacrifice a bunch of things that, you know, get your opponent's creatures down, then all of a sudden they just have their one huge threat, then you just cast a Crackling Doom. I mean, it works, you know, it's very, once again, skill intensive, but it's super effective, and I actually really like the card. I don't know if it might just be me, but I like it a lot. Okay, so on from that, we've got our single featured sorcery, which is Obliterate. I know, once again, we just talked about this card, but it is probably more crucial in this deck than even in the new mod deck, because it is essentially your win condition. You are basically stalling out, getting your indestructible stuff on the board until you can get to this card, and then just use it to decimate your opponents, and then they can't really recover from it, so you essentially just win the game from that point. Once again, you're not relying as much on like your Boros Charms or your Eerie Interludes or stuff like that, because most of your key creatures are already indestructible, so they don't care about this. So as long as your opponent's not slowballing like a Cyclonic Rift or something like that, you're pretty much set up. Like, I mean, I've played games where I've had Yahenni on the board, use this to just destroy the board. Yahenni all of a sudden becomes a 30-30. Now all of your opponents have nothing, and you've got this giant indestructible 30-30 Yahenni. I mean, you're just, most of the time they're going to scoop after that. So yeah, I know today's kind of focused on the darker side of Magic, but I don't know, it's kind of fun too sometimes. So the only feature land I have today is the Vault of the Archangel. Really effective for, once again, putting yourself back into the game if you've taken a lot of damage. Plus, it's a fun combat trick because they swing into you and you just give everything Death Touch, and now all of a sudden they're losing all their stuff. It can be really good. Most of the time people forget about your lands, to be honest. They really just don't pay attention to them. I don't know why not, but I've done it too, so I can't really, blame anyone. So anyway, with that, that is the end of the Mardu deck. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and we will see you next time. Thanks, guys.